We've worked so hard to put women into leadership positions, bring women into the workforce, propel them forwards and upwards in society, and yet we're constantly overlooking the very thing that makes us female, which is our hormonal cycle. Women weren't even included in studies
Mm.
until 1993. If you've been ignoring your cycle, which is there, then I'm highly certain that the vast majority of us have been ignoring the cycle. Then that's probably why women as a whole have so much unnecessary stress in our lives.
Welcome to Futures in the Making. Today, I'm joined by Michelle, the founder of House of Flow, a global community revolutionizing menstrual education and natural birth control. After leaving her corporate career, Michelle discovered the power of cycle syncing and made it her mission to help women everywhere unlock their body's secret code for health, productivity, and self-care. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here today and excited for the conversation.
Michelle, you had a successful corporate career before starting House of Flow. What made you realize that menstrual education was the work you were truly meant to be?
So, I didn't plan to change careers. It started as a curiosity. In 2019, I started cycle syncing, but it wasn't until the end of 2022, January of 2023, when I first learned about the industry, femtech, and I started learning more about the female body and the enormous gaps that we have in terms of research, studies, just basic body literacy and understanding what women need to feel happier and healthier in their bodies. And this is a pretty more well-known stat nowadays. But a few years ago, a lot of people weren't aware that women weren't even included in studies until
Mm.
1993. And even today, if women are included in research studies, they can't be pregnant, can't be breastfeeding. You have to be on hormonal birth control because our natural cycling hormones skew the data too much and make it too difficult to interpret.
Yes.
Just doesn't make sense, right? And
Yeah.
so it leads us to understand why more men get heart attacks, but more women die from heart attacks because we don't understand the discrepancies and the sex differences between male and females and identifying warning signs. And so the more you learn this and the more down the rabbit hole you go, it makes sense and we understand why women spend more of their time in pain than men.
Mhm.
And so when I started cycle syncing, I remember looking around and wondering, why isn't everyone else doing this, let alone talking about our periods?
Mhm.
And hello, we worked so hard to put women into leadership positions, bring women into the workforce, propel them forwards and upwards in society. And yet we're constantly overlooking the very thing that makes us female, which is our hormonal cycle, right? And
Mhm.
so going back to answer your question of, what made me realize I wanted to focus on menstrual education? Well, I had already seen the benefits of learning about my cycle and had that natural curiosity, but also personally, I'm really good at seeing the positive sides to a bad situation, and the narrative around periods and our hormones has been quite dire around the world. And I can be quite optimistic about the possibilities and seeing where something's going. And so I think I was a pretty good candidate to step in and help shatter that stigma and smash the taboo, as they say, as we mold our perspectives on making periods cool and learning about our cycles fun and starting to make this a part of my career and now fully stepping into this as my full-time career.
That is great. And I wonder, was there a defining aha moment when you knew you had to quit your corporate job and build this community?
Yes. So I lived abroad for quite a few years. And before moving back to the US, I was at a yoga retreat in Thailand. And there was a women's moon ceremony circle one evening. Normally, this isn't something I would go to, but I figured when in Thailand. And our group leader sat us down. It was about 30 women from roughly 30 different countries. And she asked us simple questions.
Mhm.
How many days per cycle can you become pregnant? What's ovulation? Why do we even have a period? And here I was thinking, oh, I've been cycle syncing for years. I got this. I got every question wrong. And that's when it hit me. Here I was working for these great tech companies, LinkedIn, Shopify, Bazaar Voice, and others, surrounded by incredibly smart and talented women who are well educated, well traveled. We have great jobs, we have access to resources, but we don't know the first things about how our body works or what our cycle is doing or how it impacts every aspect of our life. And I thought we shouldn't have to go to an island off the coast of Thailand to learn how our bodies work. And at the time, like I said, I had been living abroad. And then whenever I moved back home to the US, I realized, that's just it. Like, if we don't know this, if we don't have access to this information, then how many billions of women are there that don't know this either? And so when I moved back to San Francisco, the mecca of tech and innovation and productivity, I thought, I don't want to work for just any other old tech company building something to optimize something or the other. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Thank you. So everything started with Thailand, as I understand.
Yes.
Yeah. So many people have never heard of cycle syncing. Could you explain what it means in simple terms?
Sure. So cycle syncing just means aligning your work and life with your menstrual cycle. And this can look like anything that you do in your life, what you eat, how you move, the intensity of your workouts, your social calendar, or maybe for listeners of your audience. And for myself, it started with my work and aligning my work schedule with my menstrual cycle. And the reason why you do this is because, again, we have four phases to our cycle. So we're constantly in one phase or the other.
Mhm.
And so it's important to orient first on the differences between male and female. I think that's important to call out that men have a 24-hour cycle. So their testosterone is highest in the morning. It starts to wane in the afternoon, and it's at its lowest in the evening. And this is why it's easy for men to wake up and do the same routine every day, right? They can have that 5 a.m. morning routine, smash out a workout at the gym, head to the office, have some focus time. In the afternoon, as their testosterone starts to go down, they have a little bit of more social time. In the past, this would be heading to the golf course or a happy hour. Maybe today it's saunas and cold plunges, but having more of a social afternoon is easier on the brain than doing that intensity focused work like they can easily do in the morning. And then you head home in the evening, head to the man cave, obviously, traditionally speaking, maybe watch Netflix, and then you fall asleep and because you're exhausted from the end of the day. And then you rinse and repeat and do the same thing day in and day out. And that follows the 9 to 5 schedule really nicely. That 24-hour cycle that men run off of, we have it as well. It's our circadian rhythm. We all know it. It dictates our bodily functions. We wake up with the sun, go to sleep with the moon. But women, we have a second internal clock called our infradian rhythm, and it kicks in at puberty and lasts until menopause. So we always have this during our working years of our life. And the infradian rhythm, just like men's, impacts our brain chemistry and gives us different strengths at different times during the four phases of our cycle. So those four phases, and again, I'm just setting the foundation so we can understand the premise of cycle syncing. Those four phases are one, the menstrual phase. And this is the popular one. Everybody knows it.
Mhm.
Then we have our follicular phase. Next is ovulatory or ovulation, which a lot of people have at least heard the word. And then we have our luteal phase. And an easy way to remember the four phases is to think of the four seasons in nature. So during your menstrual phase or during your period, this is your body's inner winter. And just like in nature, everything's quiet. The animals are hibernating. Nothing is blooming, right? And internally in your body, your hormones are at their lowest. Your energy is at its lowest. Your physical energy is also at its lowest. So, right now is a great time to not feel guilty if you want to take a rest day or maybe just do some walking or light stretching at the gym.
Mhm.
However, there is a lot of science that our left and right brain hemispheres communicate the most effectively during this time. So it's actually a great time for reflection, just like in nature, setting your New Year's resolution and reflecting on the year or quarter or season that was, and a great time for assessing situations, any decisions you need to make, or understanding, where am I and where am I going? And then we have spring or our follicular phase. So just like in nature, you're coming out of winter, you're starting to sprout, your energy begins to build a little bit more because your estrogen is starting to rise again. And just like flowers begin to bloom, you also begin to bloom. It's a lot easier for you to see the positive side of things during this phase. You're naturally a bit more creative as your energy starts to grow. So it's a great time for brainstorming activities, or if you're starting a new routine, a new project. I always say now is the best time to start your new gym routine if you've been wanting to. Don't wait until an arbitrary, next month or the first of the month, or I'll start next week. It's like, no, start in your follicular phase because that's when your energy is starting to sprout a bit more.
Mhm.
And there's a bit of optimism in the air about you. And also for work, I think this is a great time to start creating prototypes, figure out what the MVP is. You can really easily dream big, and use the estrogenic effects, again, those energizing effects on your brain that really help you solve problems and strategize. Because our next season, coming our ovulatory season or our inner summer, is known as your inner Beyonce phase. As one of my favorite authors in this space, Maisie Hill, she wrote a book called Period Power. And she says, obviously, your estrogen is at its highest during this phase. So naturally, you're going to be feeling like $1 million. You'll execute like a queen. If you have a big presentation to do at work or a date night, like now's the time to schedule that in because people are naturally more attracted to you. So if you have a negotiation that you need to do or you want to use your communication skills while they're at their best, use this time to your advantage and get those things booked on your calendar. On the contrary, you're also going to want to avoid any slower moving activities, whether it's a quiet night in, a yin yoga class, saying no to a social outing because you're going to be craving that energy. And this is exactly why, to put it back to the male, the male cycle compared to ours, this is exactly why it's really important to understand where you are at in your cycle so you can use it to your advantage. Because if you're in your inner summer, you can wake up early, do that hit routine, have 4 calls booked back to back to back. You go to a networking event in the evening, and then you meet up with your girlfriends for dinner, and you're energized and buzzing from all of this excitement. Whereas if you try to do that exact same schedule on your period or in your body's inner winter, you already know you're going to hit snooze on the alarm to go to the gym. You're hoping a client will cancel a call. You've already texted your girlfriend saying, "Hey guys, sorry I can't come tonight. I just want to be at home." And so I always like to think that cycle syncing is the ultimate way to never bail on plans again, but also use your body's internal energy and internal clock to your advantage so that you can schedule the right things at the right time. And this brings us into a really important call out. I know I'm explaining a lot on this, so feel free to shorten this a little, but this brings us into a really important call out. I've seen with a lot of women, especially in the workforce or who are high performers, you may naturally be inclined to say yes to things during this phase because you feel like, absolutely, I'm in go, go, go mode. I'm happy to have the reputation as the person that everybody turns to, and you can dump extra work on me. And people know I can handle all of this extra work. But we also have to recognize that this is just a season or it's just a phase. It's not the expectation. Again, even Beyonce takes breaks. Taylor Swift isn't on tour right now, right? Everybody else takes breaks in their natural life, and we also have to understand that we don't want that. We also need to understand that our internal voice can tell us, "Oh, if only I could always be this organized. If only I could always be this good." Right? If only I could be this disciplined. When in reality, we know that that's not the truth, right? We understand that and recognize that this is just a phase, and we respect all of our phases because they all pull out different strengths in us. And this is also why we don't want to overcommit to things during this phase because that's exactly what leads to stress, burnout, overwhelm, and then we'll start to sacrifice quality or sacrifice self-care, which we definitely don't want. And last but not least, I'll round this out with one of my favorite phases. They're all my favorite, but our luteal phase, or our body's inner autumn or inner fall. This is when the ratio of progesterone and estrogen shifts and actually causes you to notice things around you that you wouldn't have before. So you're a bit more introspective. Your brain is going to like doing those detail-driven tasks. So it's a great time to action the items maybe you put off during your social ovulatory phase, and you can sit down at your desk and enjoy putting that quarterly report together, finalizing a contract, editing some marketing content that a human eye still needs that AI can't do yet. And you're going to want to wrap up any projects the same like you would in nature, like wrap up things for the end of the year. And start to pump the brakes on any social activities so that you don't begin to feel needlessly exhausted. Because remember, winter is coming, hibernation season is coming. And so, all of this to say is that if you've been ignoring your cycle, which is there, then I'm highly certain that the vast majority of us have been ignoring the cycle, then that's probably why women as a whole have so much unnecessary stress in our lives. So, just like how guys follow the sun and run on that 24-hour cycle, for women, we run on a roughly 28-day-ish cycle. And so, it's really important that we recognize that cycle syncing isn't about doing less, it's
Mhm.
about doing the right things at the right time and being strategic about what we say yes and no to.
Whoa. Thank you. I was thinking I just didn't want to forget my question. So how many days do these phases last?
Great question. And a fun answer because it varies from woman to woman.
Hmm.
So 28 days-ish is the rough average for
Hmm.
women, where some women's entire cycle from the first day of their period until their last can be 35 days. For some women, it can be 27 days. If you're just starting out, you could imagine, okay, roughly 1 week per phase. But as you start to get to know your cycle, you might say, well, my menstruation actually isn't 7 days, it's actually only 4 days.
Hmm.
Or I feel those energetic highs for 8 days instead of 7 days. So you'll start to get to know your body and also, most importantly, start to understand your natural and normal shifts and pattern, which also is a really nice way to get in tune with your own energy, your own body.
If you apply for 100 vacancies and hear nothing back, I can help you fix your resume so it gets past ADS and improve your LinkedIn so recruiters come to you. Book your session with me at Key People today. I also wonder if there is some cycle mm, changes from month to month. I know that a lot of women experience this, like with this PCOS and other special cycles. Do they also have same like the same phases, or some of their phases are longer or shorter? And how can they define it?
Yes, so I want to make sure I understand the question correctly. So basically, if somebody doesn't have a textbook definition of a perfect
Yes.
cycle, right? If there are some irregularities to it, what
Yes.
does that
Yes.
mean?
Mhm.
So, first of all, a lot of people don't have this textbook definition, picture perfect
Yes.
cycle. And instead, I would say that's actually the norm. So, what everybody can do and understand is, hey, when I'm bleeding, and the first day of your true bleed is the first day of your cycle. So, not the first day that you are spotting, but I always like to distinguish this that the first day you have to take action. So the first day you actually need to use a pad, underwear, cup, tampon, whatever it may be, is the first day of your true cycle beginning. And that's important to distinguish.
Hmm.
Until the end of your bleed, that's your menstrual phase. And now, if you are not entirely sure how to read the signs of your body, such as checking your cervical fluid, understanding your basal body temperature, looking at your cervical position, it can be a little hard to know exactly when I'm shifting from one phase to the next. But an easy way to do this is simply just create an Excel doc or write on a sheet of paper or use one of the myriad, thousands of cycle apps that are there nowadays just to start helping you clue in and understand, how do I feel from one day to the next?
Hmm.
Do I feel drastically more energetic? Was I fine going off less sleep, or did I feel like I actually needed a couple hours of more sleep? How did I feel hunger wise? Like, what were my hunger cues telling me? What is my metabolism doing? How is that changing? And so you can kind of use this as a way to start to understand your normal, natural cyclical pattern. And especially if you have symptoms, you can start to make note of, hey, when do I start to feel really PMSy? When am I highly irritable? When do my cramps come on? And you can use all of those as identifiers that might seem random or sporadic, but I guarantee that if you start making note of this and collecting your own personal data for 2 to 3 cycles, it will become very clear to you that there is a clear pattern, that your cramps aren't random or your pain isn't random. It's actually following a very clear pattern on, oh, I always feel this way right before my period begins for X amount of days or an X amount of intensity. Quickly, I just wanted to go back to your initial question too, specifically on for women who have, say, PCOS or really long cycles.
Hmm.
Absolutely can cycle sync. You because you're still ovulating, you're still menstruating, you're still cycling. So for you, it's really important that you give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of patience and understand, hey, what does my body need so that I'm not drudging through these phases, but instead I feel supported through each phase. I understand what my body needs so I can show up as my best self. And if I have a really long luteal phase, for example, that means I know for sure that I'm not going to undereat because my body requires additional food. I need to eat more nutritious whole foods. Everybody in general does, but especially if we're in a long luteal phase, for example. And you can really make this your own. So hopefully that helps for anybody who's like, ah, I don't have this picture perfect cycle. How does cycle syncing work for me? It's like, well, as long as you have a cycle, you can cycle sync because you will go and transition through each of the phases. It's just a matter of identifying where you are and then what makes sense for you to do at any particular time.
Thank you. That was like information heavy, and I think that it's very, very interesting and practically can be used. Yeah. So, and then my next question is just right about the practical implementation of it. For example, how do you cycle sync your workouts so they align with your body's natural energy shifts?
Yeah, so this is a really popular question that I get a lot. So there's two ways of looking at this. One way, it's easy to say, oh, when you're menstruating, don't do anything, just stretch or go for a walk or do, light yoga. In your follicular phase, when you have a bit more energy and you feel a bit more creative and open to trying new things, go try that dance class or that Zumba class. In
Mhm.
your ovulatory phase or your inner summer, go do that HIIT workout or maybe run a little faster or lift a little heavier. In your luteal phase, start to tone it down again and maybe do a bar class. So all of this makes sense fundamentally, right? But realistically, unless you're on ClassPass, a lot of people are like, I have my one access to my one gym or my one Pilates studio, or I just work out at home. Like, what are you trying to make me try 50 different workouts in one cycle? No. So again, making this work for you, a really simple example is say you do, let's just say you enjoy Pilates or you have a Pilates yoga bar studio. Those are pretty common nowadays. In your menstrual phase, you can say, how do I feel? Do I actually feel like my body can handle a class right now? And if so, great. Let me move it in a way that's going to feel really good and nourishing and nurturing and not stressful. And
Mhm.
so maybe I'll go do a yin yoga class or, a lighter foundational Pilates class. In your ovulatory phase, you might say, hey, maybe I can actually push myself a little bit harder and do a Pilates pump class or a Pilates flow class or something of that nature that fits within that same type of movement. And then in my luteal phase, instead, I'll focus on more Pilates strength or I'll move a little bit slower. And even if my instructor says to go to the count of pulsing for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I know my body can just handle going 1, 2, and that's okay. And I won't and so you can make this work for you. Whereas another example could be, hey, maybe you're at the gym or you love to run or whatever it may be. A common thing that I've heard a lot of people laugh at whenever I've said this in other presentations, so I'll share it here now, is we all have been on the treadmill at some time in our life and you see someone next to you and you look over at them, how fast are they going? Okay, I can run a little bit faster. Or maybe I should go a little bit further or farther. And we have this internal competition secretly with the person next to us. Where now, if you go to the gym, you can just be like, all right, good for you, girl. Maybe she's in her ovulatory phase and she's running like a gazelle. I can turn off that mental chatter or that mental stress in my brain and just do my own workout and focus on my own thing and not fall into this comparison trap and be worried about what anybody else is doing. And instead, I can do something that's going to feel great for me. And you might recognize that I keep going back to doing what feels great in your body, doing what makes sense for you. And that's super important because we are these independent women, right? We have big, bad goals and we're ambitious and we're trying to change the world. But biologically, our body is still just trying to reproduce. It's still just trying to move mankind forward. And that's literally why we ovulate every single cycle and why it's important and healthy to have a healthy cycle because that means that all of our hormones are running optimally and our body feels safe. Like now is a safe time for you to have a potential pregnancy, which would put you in a vulnerable position. And we're not thinking about this, but our body is. And so if we try to push ourselves too hard at the gym and go, go, go and mind over matter at a time in our cycle when we're biologically supposed to be resting, what will happen is that instead of feeling safe, our body will feel stressed. And so our stress hormone cortisol will flood our body instead of the nice, happy endorphins and
Mhm.
serotonin coming from this nice workout. Our body will feel stressed. And so that's when you run into those cycles where women are like, I'm working out. Why does this feel so hard? Why do I feel exhausted after the gym, even though I'm doing all the things? What's going on? And it's because your body is telling us to please do something differently. But society is saying, oh, just listen to this arbitrary gym schedule and, wake up at 5 a.m. and do this and get on with your day. So that was a long answer, but I thought it was important to call out because all of us move our bodies in different ways. And it's just important that you start to understand what makes sense for you and when, so you can do things that are good for your body sustainably.
Yeah, I agree. Even when you see like a pregnant woman on a like ninth month and she's doing a CrossFit, it's like good for you, girl. Yeah, yes, and because in this high achievers culture, like we like women, we want to also follow our goals and be very competitive. And I'm like 100% agree that. Why should you do this? Yeah. So why should I be in this some kind of a competition on a treadmill? Like no one cares for real. Yeah. Only you. And why do you torture your body? You're torturing it at that moment. And I also agree that it's very important when you work out during the day. Because for me, for example, like the best time for workout is somewhere in from 8 to 11 a.m. And during the night, during the evening, I don't just don't feel like it's great. Yeah, especially like a gym workout. Yeah, maybe yoga, yes, but nothing really heavy. Yeah, and I don't need to show off. I don't need to prove someone else that I'm capable of doing some, I don't know, sports challenges. It's just for me and for my body. Yeah, not to compare yourself with each other's. Yeah. So thank you. And I'm like totally agree. And I wonder, is there any benefit that you can have if you will cycle syncing with this workout? So how will your body and you benefit from not torturing your body during your lower phases?
Yeah, how do you? That's a nicely worded question. How do we benefit by not torturing our bodies? I honestly cannot be overstated. So I'm glad that you asked because, again, going back to what our bodies need and what they do and understanding how the cycle works. If we want to be really scientific, we wouldn't call it the menstrual cycle. We would actually call it the ovulation cycle
Mm,
because you only will have a period, you'll only menstruate after you've had a healthy ovulation,
mm,
right? And this is really important to understand because after we ovulate, that is the time in our cycle when our body can naturally produce progesterone. And we love progesterone. I mean, don't get me wrong, we also love estrogen. We love all the hormones, right? But
mm,
progesterone has a really calming effect on our body and is responsible for maintaining or nurturing anything that was previously built up under the influence of estrogen during the first half of our cycle. So while we're building up this energy, during our spring and our summer and our Beyonce phase, right? But our estrogen levels are rising. If you ever have any, say, breast tenderness around ovulation, but it's because estrogen has this proliferative effect on the body, where progesterone comes down and normalizes it, maintains it, our bone health, our brain health, everything that we need to continuing feeling good in our body. And if we say overdo it
mhm.
consistently at the gym, we are constantly putting our body in a state where it's like, I don't have the energy to do this. topping that up with maybe I'm also not eating enough or nourishing myself or giving myself sufficient nutrients that my body needs to function and thrive, specifically during this phase in my cycle when my body's preparing for a potential pregnancy. Even if that's the last thing on my mind, it's the first thing on your body's mind. And so it actually, your metabolism speeds up during this time in your cycle when progesterone is present. So you actually need more calories. You need to eat more real food, right? Note that I'm not saying grab a whole bag of chips and a bar of chocolate. I'm saying like eat more real food during
Mhm.
this time in your cycle to support our body so it doesn't go into the stress, fear mode where we're flooded with cortisol. Because you asked, what happens if we do this too much? Well, what happens with anybody that we know like this? You have incredible mood swings, right? And
Mhm.
like not good mood swings. We're highly irritable. Our
Mhm.
blood sugar balance gets out of whack because we're not consistently giving ourselves what our body needs to stabilize, to normalize all the things that progesterone likes and needs during this time in our cycle.
Mhm.
If we have, spotting before our period begins, that can be a sign that we have lower progesterone as well. And we want to ensure that we're doing things that allows our body to function at its best, at its optimal,
Mhm.
not doing things that makes it feel like it's in a vulnerable position. It has a scarcity. It doesn't know, even though we know what we're going to eat dinner tonight. If you skipped breakfast, then your body's like, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. Oh no, right? And it starts to get stressed out. And so if we are constantly pushing ourselves and over exercising or under eating, even if we feel like we're doing everything okay, if you have any of these common symptoms, in this half of your cycle, such as the mood swings, the irritability, the acne, the, you know, raging fights and whatnot, then those are clear signs that, hey, we need to start boosting our progesterone and making sure that our body feels like, hey, this is a safe time so that we can have a healthy, optimal cycle. But most importantly, too, it's important that we do this because if we zoom out and look at our cycle as a whole, as opposed to just, the luteal phase or our
Mhm.
inner fall, looking at the cycle as a whole, we want to make sure that the next cycle and the cycle after that, we're still ovulating, and we don't have a delayed ovulation, and that we also have a healthy ovulation with a healthy uh, egg production. So there's a whole host of different reasons on why this is important, but basically, it's great to start taking care of your body. It's great to start doing things that feel good so that our body isn't stressed out.
Yeah, so sometimes taking care of your body is not to take too much care of your body. Yes, I mean not to work out too much. Yeah, and not to be on that diet. Yeah, because so. Do do you believe that if we will follow our body natural cycles, we will have less of this symptoms like breakouts, I don't know, this mood swings. So the fall and winter parts of our cycles will go smoother. Yeah, as I understand.
I believe so. And I mean, I've been doing this for the past 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really excited that Elisa Vitti, the woman who coined the term cycle syncing, she's currently conducting a study with Mira. They're a
Mm-hmm.
hormone measuring hardware company, and they're conducting the first ever study on cycle syncing. And so we'll finally have the results and the data that can back up what millions of women have been saying for years. And I think that's a really important thing to know that once we have these results, this is going to fundamentally change how we approach health,
Mm-hmm.
change people's understanding and acceptance
Mm-hmm.
of cycle syncing, and that, yes, perhaps we should take this seriously. And in fact, now we have the data to back it up because that's one of the biggest factors in women's health as a whole is that we just don't have enough research and enough studies. And you can have 100 million women shouting about how cycle syncing is changing their lives. But until we have the data to back it up, people are just like, are you sure it's not just like placebo effect? Are you sure everyone can do this? Are you sure? But I can say, I've spoken to hundreds of women, and I don't know a single person who started to cycle sync at least one aspect of her life, whether work, movement, diet, doesn't matter, and then reverted back to the old way
Mm-hmm.
because it just doesn't make sense to. And I even think that cycle syncing is the gateway to a broader cyclical awareness. And for a lot of girls, it starts to open up their world and their own body into how to start taking care of themselves. So, yes, I absolutely believe that if you do cycle sync, it will fundamentally change your life, change how you feel. And once you do it, you won't go back.
Thank you. And the next topic that I wanted to talk with you is birth control. There was a lot of like buzzing around birth control for several years about like hormonal birth control, that it can be dangerous, and so on and so on. So, what are some of the biggest hidden effects of hormonal birth control that women should know about?
Yeah, so I should say I'm not for or against birth control, but or hormonal birth control, but I am for being fully informed of all your options so that you can make the best decision for your age and phase and stage of life. I think birth control is an incredible tool that we have in our toolkit should you need it, but it's also worth being aware what's going on in your body, right? And there are so many different types from the pill, patch, IUD, shot.
Mhm.
Nowadays there's apps that act as birth control, right? So, and they all act a little bit differently, but the common theme maybe except for the apps, are twofold. One, it's well documented that hormonal contraceptives deplete the absorption of key micronutrients, like from our gut microbiome. So, for anyone on hormonal birth control, it's really important that we are eating sufficient whole foods, fruits, vegetables, bitter greens, seeds, legumes, the usual suspects to replenish ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, and secondly, it also does have an impact on your liver, specifically if you have synthetic hormones like synthetic estrogen and progestin circulating. We want to make sure that we're helping out our liver to detox the excess estrogen circulating throughout our body. So, again, bitter greens, I love dandelion tea, any of the things that are going to be helpful in aiding our liver. I also know a lot of people even like to take liver tablets because they don't like eating liver. But those are easy ways that we can just support our body to also ensure that should or if we ever want to transition off, that transition off of the hormonal contraceptives won't be so drastic because our body will have that strong foundation of having all the nutrients that it needs, of having like a well-functioning liver. Um, and then also in terms of effects, this is kind of it's different for everybody, but what I've seen time and time again, largely, is that a lot of people will say, I don't have any effects. Like, this is just what I know. Like, my body feels fine. And then they come off and they're like, oh my gosh, this is what a libido is? Wow. Like, I can't believe I had this turned off for years. And so, that your libido, as well as mental clarity or some of that like mental fog, or just you can also hear this as being disconnected from your body, are some things that you might not realize are symptoms until you come off and that mask kind of comes off and your body starts regulating truly again. Your hormones start communicating and doing their job naturally again. Effectively, your reproductive system fully turns on again, specifically if you were on a hormonal contraceptive that interrupted that communication. And so, again, it varies on person to person. This isn't prescriptive, but they are
Mhm.
definitely key indicators to be aware of.
Oh, and I agree with this idea of understanding your body better. And I was like going off and on birth control pills like several times for quite a long period of time. I don't know, maybe it's me getting older and understanding and feeling my body better, but I feel that I didn't have that sensations of my body when I was like 20 before I got on these pills. But then after I went off them, I realized like, oh my God, I really feel this cycle stuff. It's like changing. Yeah, it's and I was really, really surprised with that because I believe that before going onto birth control in my 20s, I just didn't realize that they were existing. Yeah, so I don't know. And the second interesting point that I know a lot of people that love to return to birth control, so they can't handle this fluctuation during this cycle. Maybe they have like a very painful period or like or other stuff. Yeah. So they are just waiting. For example, they're getting pregnant. They're spend their maternity leave, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to go on a birth control pills again." Yeah.
Yeah, if I can touch on that quickly, because that's also part of the work that I do.
Mhm.
When I read skilled to make this career transition, I became double certified both in a fertility awareness educator, so to teach the natural birth control, but also as a menstrual cycle practitioner. And so whenever I hear about any period problems or like these crazy fluctuations or it's just so difficult, my first instinct is to ask, well, why? Well, why are if it is true, your menstrual cycle, your ovulation cycle is a normal process in your body, then why is pain associated with it?
Hmm.
Because in a healthy, optimal cycle, your period should just arrive with minimal to no disruption to your life, meaning that it just arrives and you just carry on. Yeah, maybe you have a little bit lower energy, but you don't have to cancel all your plans and sit and cry in bed all day, right? To minimal disruption, to maybe you notice, oh, I was a little irritable, but also maybe I just needed to eat a bigger breakfast genuinely. If it's not something exasperated into PMDD, for example. But if we're having these debilitating period cramps, if we're having irrational mood swings, if we're likely to get teary over things that normally wouldn't upset us consistently, cycle after cycle, I would just start to ask and wonder, well, why is that? And why don't we look at addressing the root cause first and foremost so that we can ensure we're also then ruling out any serious conditions that need a proper diagnosis, such as endometriosis, fibroids, PCOS, that need to be looked at instead of just masked and put on the pill again. Again, nothing is wrong with the pill, to each their own, but I just feel like as a there's not that many people who have spoken or worked with a menstrual cycle practitioner, and so if you feel seen or kind of recognize yourself in any of this, just know that you don't have to continuously suffer. You don't have to just put up with being in pain because it's part of being a girl, because it's absolutely not, right? Like in a healthy, optimal cycle, you feel fine. Like your cycle just arrives, your hormones are doing what they're supposed to be doing to help you feel your best and show up as your best. So anything that deviates away from that is time that we can start asking questions and seeking answers.
That's surprising because I also thought that it's like we're just different, and someone has this better genetics without pain, and someone has like not that lucky, yeah. But yeah, so maybe it needs treatment, yeah. Need tech talent fast? At Key People, we connect companies in the US and Europe with elite tech experts from Latin America and the EU, top tier skills and optimal costs. 91% success rate. Women own, HR smart, tech savvy. Click the info box to learn how we can hire your next tech star. If someone wants to come off hormonal birth control, what's the safest and most empowering way to do this?
Yeah. So a lot of us are told, like, yeah, you can just come off whenever you want. And technically that's true, right? But again, going back to the essence of being informed, we want to prepare our body for this transition because it's an actual transition. So first and foremost, our cycle isn't solved overnight. The same way you're not going to go to the gym today and have a six pack in the evening or eat whole foods for one meal and then, outdo years of eating processed foods. Similarly, we have to understand what's happened to our cycle while we were on whatever form of birth control we were on, and recognize that our natural reproductive system, our natural hormones and communication pathways have been disrupted to some extent. And so we have to give our body patience and grace while it learns to communicate again. Because we can kind of think that like our hormones were on vacation when we were on birth control and our cycle was essentially turned off. And so we need to allow ourselves, ideally, 1 to 6 months for your period to start to come back again, to normalize. And this can even be up to 18 months if you had the shot as your form of birth control. It can take anywhere from 9 to 12 cycles. Special mention, I'm not saying 9 to 12 months, but 9 to 12 cycles.
Mhm.
In case your cycle isn't an exact 30 days or 28 days, for everything to regulate, for us to a sufficient luteal phase length, for us to have continuous healthy ovulations, for our, any problems that may have been lingering before we went on birth control or came about from being on the pill, or IUD, to whenever we came off, for that to kind of go away. Because one of the biggest things we can do is ensure that we are also doing those lifestyle modifications, again, such as replenishing ourselves with any of those key nutrients that were depleted, such as B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, selenium. Those are some of the key nutrients that we know our gut bacteria's ability to absorb was disrupted. So before we stop cold turkey, I would say make sure you're putting your body in the best position by focusing on nourishing yourself, eating as many whole, real, nutritious foods as you can, ideally for 3 months if you have that much time, if not, at least 1 month. If you've already stopped or you're planning to stop today or this weekend, that's okay, but just try to really focus on building up that baseline, as well as recognizing that some people say, my period came back with a vengeance. I got off and now I have all these symptoms. Well, look at our lifestyle, right? Like, are we genuinely sleeping 7 to 9 hours? You have a consistent bedtime, treat yourself like a child, like, get your sleep. It's super important. Are we actually putting our phone away, sitting at the table and eating our meals slowly and not scarfing them down in front of the screen in 7 minutes, right? Are we actually eating and nourishing ourselves? Are we moving our body in non-stressful ways?
Mm.
Still moving it, still strengthening it, absolutely still doing what's good for your cardiovascular and muscular system, but not stressing ourselves out. Are we dealing with our inner child trauma or anything else that could be, showing up in our life as stress, work, otherwise, relationships, and doing things to put our body in the best position to have a smooth transition with confidence and with ease and allow our normal natural cycle to come back in a smooth way without or with minimal symptoms.
Whoa, it's a huge preparation and a huge work to do this smoothly, yeah. And as an alternative, as I understand, you offer natural birth control. And can you explain how natural birth control works and how effective it really is compared to conventional methods?
Yeah, absolutely. So the method I teach, it's called the symptothermal method, which is just a fancy word, but it's 99% effective, which is the same as the pill when you learn and apply the method properly, right? So you'll learn how to read your body in a way so the same way that you know if your stomach is grumbling, you're hungry, if your mouth is dry, you're thirsty, you'll be able to confidently identify when does my fertile window open, when does it close, so you can know with certainty if I have sex today, is pregnancy possible? Yes or no? You'll be able to confirm ovulation. You'll know if your luteal phase length is sufficient. And you'll also begin to see your cycle as a monthly report card into your health. And I also like to help clients learn. I mean, I do help every client do this, but it's also always nice to see that aha moment happen in a client when they are able to recognize that this form of birth control is about so much more than just preventing pregnancy or alternatively being able to identify your fertile window if you are trying to conceive. And it's truly a way for them to gain real-time data
Mhm.
into what's happening in their cycle, what their hormones look like, what they're doing, and also highlight any potential problems way before they would show up as exacerbated symptoms in your body more seriously that you would want to get tested for. Um, and even if you're not thinking about pregnancy,
Mhm.
even if you just want to simply understand how your body works, like nothing gives you more power than having this basic body literacy. That's a skill for life. You can use it all the way up until you reach menopause, right? And I also think it's an important call out that you should learn the method from a qualified instructor, specifically if you want to use it for birth control, because then the margin for error is zero unless you are
Mhm.
open to conceiving. And so that way you can at least make sure that you're learning the method accurately, applying the rules properly, and just know that you can do this. Just because you were never taught about your cycle when you were younger or when you first had your period doesn't mean you can't do it now. You're super smart. This is easy. And I genuinely feel like everybody should learn this method, regardless if they are going to use it today or in the future.
Michelle, could you please share like some of the steps of this method? Because, for example, when you've asked how many days women can get pregnant, I realized that interesting how I would answer this question, and I thought that oh, probably like around fertile window is like 1 to 2 days, days of ovulation. But but you also have a window of about 5 to 6 days. Yeah, so before the ovulation. And what does it mean that this 99% how does they work? 99% of safety, how does they work? How do they work with these windows?
Yes, and so the way you're, let me pause. The way you're able to get this accuracy is because you're able to confidently identify when does your fertile window open and
Hmm.
when does it close. And this is really important so that you can act accordingly on whether or not you want to have intercourse during those days or not, or substitute with something else. And so the way that I teach it in the symptothermal method includes two parts. One, you take your basal body temperature every day throughout your cycle. And this is mainly important, first, because if your temperature is way too low, then we can rule out any like metabolism issues. But secondly, and most importantly, it's in the second half of your cycle where progesterone is present
Hmm.
that we'll see a noticeable shift in our temperature. And that's because progesterone has a warming effect on the body. Again, all our body wants to do is understand, are we going to get pregnant? And in case we are, I want to make sure I have this like warm, nutrient dense, nourishing environment for a potential fertilized egg to implant into. So progesterone warms up the body so
Hmm.
we can understand, hey, if I'm taking my temperature and then all of a sudden, and I teach you how to do this, all of a sudden you see that noticeable shift and it's sustained over a few days, then you can confidently say, I ovulated. Because that would not have happened if I
Hmm.
didn't ovulate.
Hmm.
Obviously, we all have common sense, and this is why it's important to use the rules. But, like, obviously, if you had a fever, your temperature would be higher, right? We understand this, but we're not walking around with fevers every day.
Hmm.
So, and the second piece, and what's really important, is learning how to identify your cervical fluid. So, you know that white stuff you see in your underwear sometimes, and we're like, what is this? It's actually the coolest thing ever. It's cervical fluid, and we might think it all looks the same, but it actually looks different when you start to understand and interpret it from say, the middle of your follicular phase to whenever you're in your ovulatory phase. You'll actually see a difference from it being a bit more creamy, lotiony, white, a little bit tacky or sticky to actually becoming crystal clear. It feels lubricative, right? It stretches consistently. And so you'll start to be able to identify, well, what type of cervical fluid do I have? And cervical fluid is super cool because it aids in the transportation of sperm. In the media and in movies, we're always told it's the strongest that survives,
Hmm.
that quick, mighty sperm, when in reality, by and large, it's our cervical fluid that even dictates, can sperm enter the body right now? Yes or no? Is my fertile window open? Yes or no? Am I going to weed out any deformed or defected sperm that we don't want? Are we going to help nourish the sperm that we want to wait for our potential egg? Or are we going to kill off the sperm, right? So cervical fluid is really cool and really important to learn. But those are the two key biomarkers or life signs or body signs that I will teach you so that you can easily identify, like, is my fertile window open and did it close? And the rest of the time, so the vast majority of my cycle, I confidently know it is biologically impossible to become pregnant
Hmm.
because I'm not fertile. There's no sperm there. There's no egg there. I've already ovulated. You understand what all these terms mean and what's going on in your body. It's really important. And of course, there's a few other things you can do if you want. Like some girls love taking ovulation predictor uh, kits, right, where you like pee on a stick. Other people like learning their cervical position. There's all these other things that you can do, and all of them are great. But I, by and large, with my clients, love to focus on the two key factors just because they're free, they're always there. And once you learn them once, then you have that as a skill for life.
Yeah, I was sitting in joking inside of my head that oh, cervical fluid is like a security guard and face control of my Beyonce club.
I love that.
Ah,
Yes.
yeah, so of the very last question on this topic, because it's really exciting. I wonder, do you recommend any devices? Because, for example, I use Apple Watch, but I realized that my wrist temperature, like a basal temperature, like goes everywhere during the month. So when I was starting tracking it, I was like confused and a bit concerned. Maybe there is some kind of a problem with my progesterone and so I didn't see that clear trends as they should be. Yeah. And I've heard from some other girls that they use Oura Ring, for example, and it's like better, yeah, in this checking the basal body temperature. So what do you think?
Yeah, BBT. It's a long word. So there are a lot of different hardware options available now. I will always start teaching people with a basic thermometer. It's like $9. You can get it off Amazon, your local pharmacy, strictly because whenever you take your temperature directly, whether orally through your mouth, auxiliary, like underneath your armpit, like it's the closest to the basal body temperature that we're going to get, which is different from, and the reason why we don't use a different thermometer as if you had a fever. But what we're trying to get at is our body's core resting temperature,
Hmm.
meaning what is your temperature after you've had a solid 4 to 5 hours of sleep, uninterrupted. You're not talking, you're not getting up, walking around, you're not saying hi to the dog, you're not going to the bathroom, but your core resting temperature. And the best way to capture that is directly through from your body. So I always teach that first and foremost, and then people can graduate, should they prefer, into another product that I love, which is called Temp Drop, TEMPDROP. This isn't sponsored. I just love them for their ease of use. It's an armband that you can stick up onto your arm.
Hmm.
And similar to the Aura Ring, right? It tracks your temperature overnight, automatically syncs it to your phone, so it's easy. I have heard that since your arm is closer, to your heart, to your body, that it's able to capture more of a direct temperature. I have specifically noted from using it that my temperature on my chart appears to be lower when I track with my temp drop as opposed to my direct
Mouth.
oral thermometer. So,
Hmm.
for example, instead of my temperature being, let's just say for the ease of example, 97 degrees, instead it'll be 96 degrees, right? But I also have been doing this long enough that I recognize nothing's wrong. And then, yes, we have Aura Ring, which is super popular nowadays. Obviously, it's on your finger. So again, in the fertility awareness or natural birth control space, you're like, it's a little bit further away from the core body temperature. It is capturing similarly to what Temp Drop does, where it captures rather than your core basal body temperature, instead it aggregates or captures your average temperature from the whole entire night's sleep. So say you went to bed at 10, woke up at 6, we have 8 hours of temperatures that it's consistent that it is consistently capturing on the external part of our body, and then it says, okay, here's your temperature for the day.
Hmm.
I will say this with a caveat: while I teach the symptothermal method specifically with the oral temperature, I understand millions of women are feeling so in tuned and connected with and finally learning about their body through the use of the Aura Ring and are using it for natural birth control with the company Natural Cycles. And like I said earlier, I'm not for or against a specific form of birth control, but I am for being fully informed of all your options and
Hmm.
understanding how they work, understanding the nuances, the pros and the cons, so that you feel fully in control and like you're not just being product dependent on a specific product, and understanding your agency in all of this and saying, hey, what's in my control? What decisions do I want to make today based on what I know?
Thank you. Yeah, and I feel that the Apple Watch, they also track this average temperature.
Yeah.
That's why it's so hard to understand this data. Yeah, so probably Oura Ring is better in this direction. So you've lived all over the world, London, Munich, San Francisco, Sydney. How have you seen conversation about menstrual health differ across cultures?
So this is one of the reasons why I moved into this space because I learned that no matter where you live or what your background is, what language you speak, a lot of us were simply never taught anything about our cycles. And a prime example, I mean, we have, I would imagine, quite a diverse audience, right? From both of us have lived in different places. We both have different professional backgrounds. So I would love to know who listening can tell me what a healthy period cycle feels like, what an optimal cycle looks like. Who can tell me why we even get periods, right? How do you know if you ovulate without an app predicting and telling you you likely ovulated today. Like, who actually knows the answer to these questions? And they're all simple questions that we should all be able to answer. But by and large, I recognize that nobody can. And whenever I was in Southeast Asia, during that same trip, I went to quite a few different countries, and in a lot of them, you're unable to go to temples, or any other places of prayer while you're on your period. And I'm just like, who made that rule up? I mean, obviously, we respect history,
Man.
but it's rather an outdated rule that doesn't quite make sense in 2025, right? And in reality, there is a lot of kudos that we need to give to all of the people who are working in the menstrual hygiene space, who are making it easier for girls to get access to period products that they need so that they can remain in school, feel safe going to school and going about their life whenever they are on their periods. There's a lot of people doing a lot of work in remote areas and speaking with men in rural tribes about how they can support women and not ban them from society, school, places of worship, cooking, sleeping in the family room just because she's on her period. Again, these are all things that still happen in 2025 around the world. But these are the important conversations that we need more of. And we're super fortunate to be in the positions that we are, where we can at least talk about this publicly, make a career out of it, when there are, again, just so many millions of women today who are struggling, and it's a detractor, and it's preventing them from getting the education or work that they can or need or should have access to, simply because of a normal bodily function that just hasn't ever been understood.
Yeah, and I feel that men are also getting more involved in this discussion and this topic too. Yeah, so it's a huge progress. Yeah, so several decades ago, it was like a banned topic. Yeah, and now everyone is getting more involved. So it's like a huge win for women, that it's not that I don't know, it's not a blank spot anymore. Yeah, so we have this ability to talk about it, and that's great. And what's your bigger vision for changing how society view periods?
This is such a big question because we need the distribution to make a dent in this space, because there's so much pushback and inertia, right? I mean, going back to the very, very beginning of our conversation, like, we can make so much progress, we can have these conversations, and then laws are passed or funding is taken away. And it's just, sometimes it feels like you're going in circles, pushing against this big rock that's not moving anywhere. But I largely and truly believe that society will continue to change. And have seen this in my work, specifically in two different areas. One, I also like to host period positivity parties for girls who are just starting to get their periods and they want to learn about it. And I always make a parent or an adult figure come with them. I'll tell the girls, your cycle is your superpower. Periods are so cool. And they're like, I know, my mom told me. And I'm like, wow, like, we never had that conversation growing up. But also during these same parties, it's always the adults who have way more questions than the kids, because the kids are just learning this not in a stigmatized or shameful or an embarrassed way. And they're just like, this is cool. I get to have a period. That's awesome. Like, way to be a girl. And also, for a second reason why I feel like society's views on periods are going to continue to change is because, I don't know about you, but I don't know a single Gen Zer who's not on TikTok. And I'm pretty sure the algorithm is working because everybody seems to know about cycle syncing nowadays. So if you have interns or an entry level employee or just anybody in your life who's of that age, you better believe, like, she understands her cycle, and she at least is comfortable talking about it. And that's only going to continue to grow, especially as these people get older and become in and grow into their own decision making roles, where now it's, you kind of feel like you're a little bit on the fringe if you cycle sync at work, for example. Whereas I definitely think that in about 10 years or so, it's going to be the norm. And I like to think of where menstrual cycle awareness and education is today. It is very much where, like, mental health was 10 years ago. Like, 10 years ago, we never talked about anxiety, depression, mental health. It was this kind of shunned yucky type of topic. Where nowadays it's super weird if your company doesn't offer a meditation app and health benefits. And everybody asks, like, would you learn at therapy this week with your friends and your partner? And I definitely think that that's in the same realm of where menstrual health is going, that it's only going to become more common. It's going to be part of society's nomenclature and typical themes of things that we discuss and accepted and understood and even celebrated.
I agree. And I wish that we will have more sincere support in all of these topics because when I hear that some corporation gives you this mental days, I don't know, like mental benefits, and at the same moment they lay off you in one day, or at the same moment they are um, asking you to work 996, probably it won't help. Yeah. And you will just spend half of your salary on a therapist. Yeah, so I wish that we will be more transparent and clear in our intentions here. And yeah, what's next for you and House of Flow, especially with the tech product you hinted at?
Yeah, there's so much to do in this space. I'm just launching my online membership where we can work together if you want to confidently come off hormonal birth control if you're not already off and actually address underlying symptoms, PMS, cramps, pain from endometriosis, and the rest of it so you can enjoy your period. And as for a tech product, I trust this will come into fruition in due time. But a big learning I've had over the last 18 months is that it's best to focus on one thing and do it really well than trying to get 10 things off the ground. So stay tuned on that.
Okay, so it's in a stealth mode. That's great. If you could tell every woman one thing about her cycle, what would it be?
Periods are cool, cramps are optional. Your cycle is your superpower, so learn how to use it. You're very smart and capable of learning this. You don't need an app or a hardware or a subscription to tell you if you're fertile. Like, you just have to know how to read your body, learn what it's telling you, and understand how it works.
And for men listening, what do you want to tell them to know about cycles and supporting women?
Yeah, to any men, you're listening to girls right now. You work with girls, you live with girls, you manage girls, you support girls, you're surrounded by women. And so it's in your best interest to understand how we operate, how we work, what makes us tick. If your partner is a female, then use the cycle syncing method to start to understand, hey, when should I plan these surprise date nights when she's going to be totally up for it and love the spontaneity versus when should I plan time out to go hang out with my guy friends and actually leave her at home alone on the couch because then we'll both be happy and it's what we both prefer. But also understand about how you can help out by doing simple things, right? Such as when will it make a noticeable difference and truly help if I do something big like giving her the night off from having to take care of the kids
Mhm.
for 1 or 2 nights so she can just chill or rest or whatever that looks like in your life. Again, at work, maybe it's understanding when's the best time to have that performance review conversation. Is it when half my team is PMSing and they're going to stress out for the next week? Or should we do this in their follicular phase when feedback will roll off their back and everything will be easily understood and we can see possibilities for how we can work differently in the future? So there's a whole host of different ways you can work together, but I would just say if you don't know where to begin, just start learning, start asking questions. I guarantee you, every girl is going to be very excited that you're at least curious, that you're at least open to talking about something that has largely been taboo, especially to talk about in front of men. And you have the chance now to really take an active interest and become an active participant in how the other half of society works.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your energy and optimism. And I wish you good luck with your product and with your bringing this information to the world. So it was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks so much, Elena.
Dear listener, I would be so grateful if you hit like and subscribe. It really helps more thoughtful and curious people like you find these conversations and supports the work we are doing.